Kendall Jenner, the younger sister of Khloe, Kourtney, and Kim, may be sending her famous siblings running for the Hollywood Hills after showing them up in her latest Instagram posts. The 21-year-old model rocked her best pinup style while posing in a super sexy bikini. Jenner captioned the shot with 3 pizza emoticons, referring to her Pizza Boys crop tee or possibly an enthusiasm for pepperoni pizza. Regardless of what she's planning for dinner, the brunette beauty's vintage style didn't stop there. Jenner sported another retro look in a mirror selfie captioned, "Rest of 2017." 6 months may be a long time to sport the same outfit every day, but it's clear Jenner has changed course after being spotted in France wearing a 50s and 60s inspired looks. Jenner is currently vacationing in Cannes, France, with her sister Kourtney Kardashian and rumored boyfriend ASAP Rocky.
Yellowstone National Park has been hit by a swarm of earthquakes, but the region's supervolcano is still slumbering. More than 450 earthquakes have been recorded in the area since June 12th. The most recent was a magnitude 3 that hit June 19th, around 9 miles northeast of West Yellowstone, Montana. The highest magnitude quake, measured 4.5. It struck Yellowstone National Park June 15th, and it marked the strongest trembler in the region since 2014. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, most of the quakes ranged in magnitude from 0 to 1. The University of Utah, part of the Yellowstone Volcano Observatory, says seismic activity near volcanoes can signal an eruption is about to take place. But the USGS says earthquake swarms in Yellowstone are common. The organization currently lists the Yellowstone volcano alert level at normal. A spokesperson for the agency told Newsweek the current seismic activity is, quote, slowly winding down. For United News International, I'm Kate Caldwell.
On Wednesday, seismologists said an automatically generated report of a magnitude 6.8 earthquake in the Pacific Ocean 10 miles west of Santa Barbara was a false alarm. It was based on a quake that happened in the same area nearly a century ago. A geophysicist from the U.S. Geological Survey said the quake did happen, but it happened in 1925. The report caused huge ripples on Twitter. Dozens of automated tweets were generated, and concerned citizens were hoping the people of California were okay. But suspiciously, there were no tweets or posts from anyone having felt the trembler. These usually precede the official alerts and come in big numbers. A quake of that size would have been felt by millions.
Federal health officials are saying mosquitoes that can spread Zika, dengue, and chikungunya viruses are in more counties in the southern United States than previously thought. After a Zika outbreak in Florida last summer, researchers from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention expanded mosquito collection measures across the South. The new study revealed a 21% increase in the number of counties with Zika-carrying mosquitoes. There was also a 10% increase in counties with dengue-spreading mosquitoes.
The extreme heat wave in the southwest region of the U.S. is making it harder to fight against the wildfires in that area more difficult. On Wednesday, authorities noted that parts of Arizona, California, and Nevada have reached temperatures nearly 120 degrees. This has created problems for firefighters. A couple of firefighters in California had to be treated for heat-related injuries as they continue to try and fight the fires in San Bernardino Mountains.
The northern Gulf Coast from the Florida Panhandle to eastern Texas is preparing for potential life-threatening flash flooding from slow-moving tropical storm Cindy. The major threat of rain, perhaps a foot or more by Thursday, stretches from southeastern Louisiana to the Florida Panhandle. The third tropical storm of 2017, Cindy was 170 miles south-southwest of Morgan City, Louisiana, as of early Wednesday. Forecasters have warned residents in parts of Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, the Florida Panhandle, and East Texas of 6 to 9 inches of rain and up to 12 inches in certain spots. Texas Governor Greg Abbott ordered the State Operations Center on Tuesday to raise its readiness level from level 4, normal conditions, to level 3, increased readiness.
These hooded students fighting with riot police say they want a chance to learn. Theirs is a universal dream that tens of thousands here say they cannot afford. They call themselves the Confederation of Chilean Students, and they're protesting in cities and towns, including the capital, Santiago.
I'm marching for a change in the university financial system so that it becomes a free system of quality that allows everyone the chance to study.
What they're demanding is free higher education without debt. They say they cannot afford the degrees they need to find jobs. They also don't want to take out crippling high-interest loans and be indebted for decades.
Today we marched to denounce the state credit program and also for independence of education system.
These protesters want President Michelle Bachelet to follow through on her promises. Bachelet's term ends in March, and protesters say her proposed reforms are not enough. Chile holds presidential elections in November. The current frontrunner is proposing a scholarship system and sliding scale tuitions. Until these students get what they want, they say they're going to keep protesting, and they're calling on others from all walks of life to join their movement. Paul Chadurjian, Al Jazeera.
Under tight security, Nabra Hassanen's parents arrived with a police escort at their daughter's prayer and funeral service, 3 days after her brutal murder. Mourners filed into a suburban Washington, D.C. mosque, many stunned by the crime.
It's very terrifying and it's sad how it all happened, and it shouldn't happen to anyone, and it's really terrifying.
This was such a tragic thing which has happened, and it is against humanity, against everything.
Some of those coming into this prayer service came from several hundred miles away and said they didn't even know the slain teenager. But they said they felt they had to show their solidarity with the Muslim community, and in essence said an attack against one is an attack against them all. Hassanen was beaten to death early Sunday morning following a dispute between a group of her friends and a bat-wielding motorist. 22-year-old Darwin Martinez Torres was arrested and charged with her murder. Police are still investigating, but believe road rage, not hate, motivated the crime. Still, leaders in the Muslim community are skeptical.
We feel that the law enforcement officials really need to check every motive there is and make sure they don't leave any stone unturned. Even if there's a 0.5% chance that it might be a hate crime, we want that on the table.
To be a legacy that's being carried.
Hassanen's service was streamed live on Facebook. Media wasn't allowed inside. The 17-year-old was remembered as generous and devoted to her community.
And I will tell you that this community will not forget this young lady, nor her family. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give them the strength.
At an evening vigil, Muslims and non-Muslims celebrated Hassanen's life, sharing flowers and prayers. The teen's death has struck a chord in this corner of Virginia.
You realize how quickly that could happen to anybody's daughter, and just it's just horrific. It's horrible.
Some even found hope in their despair.
I mean, it's really beautiful and heartwarming to see everyone come together, people from different backgrounds and of different faiths coming together, just kind of to, support each other during this hard time.
And others prayed a crime that left a deep wound in this multicultural community won't happen again. Diane Estabrook, Al Jazeera, Reston, Virginia.
This was Prime Minister Theresa May 2 weeks ago, confident of election victory. This was her last week, fleeing the anger around Grenfell Tower, where she'd failed to meet the survivors of the fire. She'd misjudged the public mood. Now she's struggling to form a solid coalition with the small Northern Ireland Democratic Unionist Party, after the election that was supposed to go her way led to a hung parliament. On Wednesday, the Queen will symbolically open Parliament as she's done 62 times before. In a speech, she'll lay out the laws that May's government hopes to pass.
My lords, pray be seated.
Parliament then debate it and put it to a vote. A vote the government must win if it is to govern successfully. Political analysts believe the speech will leave out many of the Conservatives' election promises. No mention of grammar schools or the controversial social care reform.
Well, what I think we'll see is a lot of Brexit-related legislation. I think there'll be a trade bill to do with collecting tariffs and our future outside the EU customs union. There'll also be something on immigration. Now, both Labour and Conservatives agree that free movement will have to end once we leave the EU.
Britain is in the grip of a heat wave and a political crisis, coupled with 4 hateful attacks on civilians and a grim fire. The public mood is dark. There is anger, there is insecurity, and on Wednesday, protesters plan to march here to disrupt the Queen's speech and shut down London. Not what the overstretched police force need right now. Also capitalising on this mood, Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn, who has vowed to vote down the Queen's speech and upend May's plans to form a minority government. Prime Minister May wants her government to work for ordinary working people. But the widespread view is that her time working as Prime Minister will be counted in months rather than years. Charlie Angela, Al Jazeera.
On Wednesday, a U.S. lawmaker said he had introduced a bill to make it legal for senators and representatives to carry guns anywhere in the country, except the U.S. Capitol building. Representative Jody Hice of Georgia warned that members of Congress have a bullseye on our backs. He said his proposal was a step to safeguard the personal safety of lawmakers in light of recent events. This seemed to be in reference to an attack last week in which a gunman opened fire on Republican members of Congress practicing for a charity baseball game.
The American Civil Liberties Union sued police in the nation's capital on Wednesday on behalf of 4 people detained during the U.S. presidential inauguration, claiming they were subjected to unconstitutional arrests, excessive force, and police abuse. More than 200 people were arrested in Washington in January after some black-clad activists among those protesting Donald Trump's swearing in clashed with police a few blocks from the White House in an outburst of violence rare for an inauguration. The lawsuit against the Metropolitan Police Department, the District of Columbia, and individual officers claims the plaintiffs broke no laws at the protests and endured abuses, including being pepper sprayed and denied food and water for hours. The lawsuit says photojournalist Shay Horse was pepper sprayed while taking photographs and subjected to unjustified invasive body probes. It also said demonstrator Elizabeth Lagasse was peacefully protesting when she was arrested and handcuffed so tightly that her wrists bled.
Iraq's military said in a statement, Islamic State militants on Wednesday blew up the Grand Al-Nuri Mosque of Mosul and its famous leaning minaret. The destruction occurred as Iraqi forces seeking to expel the group from the city closed in on the site. 3 years ago, it was from this medieval mosque that the militants' leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi declared a self-styled caliphate spanning parts of Syria and Iraq. Iraqi Prime Minister said in a brief comment on his website, blowing up the Al-Hadba minaret and the Al-Nuri Mosque amounts to an official acknowledgement of defeat.
On Wednesday, Japan opened a missile defense drill to the public, a move intended to reassure the country it is ready to counter any missile attack by its neighbor, North Korea. Near Tokyo, at the Osaka Self-Defense Forces base, a PAC-3 Patriot battery was deployed and raised its missile launcher to firing position. Akinori Hanada, an Air Self-Defense Force major, told reporters, "Making this public is a way to reassure people about their safety and bring peace of mind." In defiance of UN Security Council resolutions, North Korea has forged ahead with its missile and nuclear weapons programs and has repeatedly threatened to destroy the U.S., Japan, and South Korea. Earlier this month, U.S. Defense Secretary Jim Mattis said that North Korea's advancing weapons programs represent the quote-unquote most urgent threat to national security.
Mourners gathered for the funeral of Nabra Hassanan are haunted by visions of her final moments, running for her life in the moonlight, trying in vain to escape the killer chasing her with a baseball bat. The vicious end to 17-year-old Hassanan's life over the weekend was a nightmare come true for hundreds of young women, mainly black and brown Muslims, who were among throngs of mourners packed into a suburban Virginia mosque for the Islamic funeral. One woman said, "That could have been us, our sisters, our best friends. It's hitting very close to home."
A viral video captured a woman repeatedly demand her son see a, quote, white doctor at a clinic in Mississauga, Canada. A bystander recorded the woman's tirade on June 18th.
"I would like to see a white doctor. You're telling me there's not one white doctor in this whole entire building."
Clinic staffers repeatedly told her they couldn't accommodate her and insisted she go to a hospital instead.
Oh my God, what type of horrible country do I live in? I don't know. My kid is sick, so I want to see somebody else that doesn't have brown teeth that speaks English then.
The woman continued demanding her son see a white doctor who speaks English for over 4 minutes. One bystander eventually confronted the woman.
Your child clearly has more issues with you being his mother than him needing to see a doctor. You are extremely rude and racist.
For United News International, I'm Milat Uni.
U.S.-backed forces are closing in on Islamic State in Raqqa, but local Syrians who've escaped the battlefield are worried about what comes after the fight. Dozens of them have volunteered to help rebuild the town once the militants have been defeated. The aim of the organization they've joined, the Raqqa Civil Council, is to restore order and keep the peace in a place where further violence could fuel the rise of a new set of extremists with global ambitions. On Wednesday, Russia announced that a meeting planned to take place in St. Petersburg between Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Rybakov and U.S. Undersecretary of State Tom Shannon has been canceled. The announcement comes after the U.S. revealed it was expanding sanctions against Russian individuals and legal entities in a bid to force the end of the Russian occupation of Crimea. 2 Russian government officials were among 38 individuals and entities added to a list of sanctions targets whose assets will be frozen and who will be forbidden from doing business with U.S. citizens and companies. A statement from the Russian Foreign Ministry blamed the decision on sanctions for impeding the dialogue and accused Washington of neglecting to offer specifics, labeling the U.S. desire to seek common ground as being unconvincing and threatening that there will be a response, including practical retaliatory measures.
On Wednesday, the Court of Justice of the European Union ruled that courts may consider vaccines to be the cause of an illness, even if there's no scientific evidence confirming a link. The EU's highest court said that if the development of a disease is timely to the person's receiving a vaccine, that may serve as enough proof. The ruling added that courts must ensure that evidence is sufficiently serious, specific, and consistent to warrant the conclusion.
A Michigan airport was filled with terror as a Canadian man shouted in Arabic before stabbing a police officer in the neck. 49-year-old Amor Ftouhi was immediately taken into custody. A criminal complaint charging him with committing violence at an airport says Ftouhi asked an officer who subdued him why the officer didn't kill him. The criminal complaint said Ftouhi stabbed Airport Police Lieutenant Jeff Neville with a large knife after yelling Allahu Akbar, the Arabic phrase for God is great. According to the FBI, Ftouhi said something similar to, "You have killed people in Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan, and we are all going to die." More charges against Ftouhi could be filed as prosecutors take the case to a grand jury seeking an indictment.
A U.S. judge heard arguments on Wednesday to halt the deportations of around 100 Iraqis arrested by immigration authorities in the Detroit area because many belong to minorities and could face torture or religious persecution in their homeland. In a coordinated sweep in recent weeks, immigration authorities moved to detain Iraqi immigrants around the country who had final deportation orders and convictions for serious crimes. The roundup followed Iraq's agreement to accept deportees as part of a deal that removed the country from President Donald Trump's temporary travel ban signed in March. The class action lawsuit brought by the American Civil Liberties Union asked the court to issue an emergency halt to the planned removals, arguing that many of those affected in Michigan are Chaldean Catholics who are widely recognized as targets of brutal persecution in Iraq.